Aleksandr Solzhenitsyn's life began in a time of upheaval. The Russian Revolution had just overturned centuries of czarist rule, plunging the nation into a period of intense transformation and uncertainty. Born in 1918, mere months after the Bolshevik Revolution, Solzhenitsyn entered a world that was rapidly changing. The old order was being dismantled, and a new, untested ideology was taking its place. His early years were marked by the shadow of Soviet power. The streets of Soviet Russia were filled with propaganda, promising a bright future under the new regime. Yet, the reality was far more complex and often harsh. He grew up witnessing the transformation of his homeland, the rise of a new ideology that promised utopia but delivered hardship. The Soviet Union embarked on ambitious projects of industrialization and collective farming, which often led to widespread suffering and disillusionment. His own family, once prosperous landowners, faced persecution under the new regime. The land reforms and collectivization policies stripped them of their property and status, plunging them into poverty and uncertainty. This early exposure to the harsh realities of Soviet life would profoundly shape his worldview, igniting within him a burning desire for truth and justice. The young Solzhenitsyn saw firsthand the disparity between the promises of the Soviet state and the grim reality experienced by its citizens. Despite the turmoil surrounding him, Solzhenitsyn excelled in his studies, developing a passion for literature and mathematics. Education became his refuge, a place where he could explore ideas and seek understanding beyond the confines of Soviet dogma. He enrolled at Rostov University, immersing himself in the world of ideas. Here, he encountered a diverse array of thoughts and philosophies, which further fueled his intellectual curiosity and critical thinking. It was during this time that he began to question the official narrative, sensing the chasm between Soviet propaganda and the lived experiences of his fellow citizens. The more he learned, the more he realized the extent of the state's deception and control. This burgeoning dissent, however, would soon have dire consequences. In a regime that tolerated no opposition, even private doubts could be dangerous. World War II erupted, casting a long shadow across Europe. The conflict brought unprecedented destruction and upheaval, affecting millions of lives, including Solzhenitsyn's. Solzhenitsyn, a staunch patriot, enlisted in the Red Army, serving as an artillery officer. He was determined to defend his homeland against the Nazi invasion, despite his growing disillusionment with the Soviet regime. He fought bravely, witnessing firsthand the horrors of war and the complexities of the human condition. The battlefield was a crucible of human experience, where courage, fear, and suffering coexisted in stark relief. Yet, even amidst the chaos of the battlefield, his doubts about the Soviet system lingered, fueled by the inefficiency and brutality he witnessed within the ranks. The disparity between the official rhetoric and the reality of military life was glaring. These doubts, expressed in private letters to a friend, would seal his fate. In a regime where surveillance was omnipresent and dissent was ruthlessly crushed, Solzhenitsyn's candid reflections were a dangerous liability. His letters, filled with criticism of the Soviet leadership and its policies, were intercepted by the authorities. This act of defiance, though private, was enough to mark him as an enemy of the state. Arrested in 1945, Solzhenitsyn was subjected to a brutal interrogation process. The Soviet justice system was swift and unforgiving, designed to break the spirit of those who dared to question the regime. He was sentenced to 8 years in a labor camp, a common fate for many who fell afoul of the Soviet authorities. The labor camps, known as the Gulag, were places of unimaginable hardship. Prisoners were forced to endure grueling work, inadequate food, and harsh living conditions. Yet, it was in these dire circumstances that Solzhenitsyn's resolve was strengthened. The suffering he witnessed and experienced only deepened his commitment to exposing the truth about the Soviet system. During his time in the Gulag, Solzhenitsyn began to write in secret. His writings were a form of resistance, a way to document the injustices he saw and to preserve his thoughts for a future where they might be heard. These early works would later form the basis of his powerful indictments of the Soviet regime. After his release from the labor camp, Solzhenitsyn continued to write, despite the constant threat of surveillance and censorship. His works, smuggled out of the Soviet Union, began to reach a global audience, revealing the brutal realities of life under Soviet rule. His courage and tenacity in the face of oppression made him a symbol of resistance and a voice for the voiceless. In 1970, Solzhenitsyn was awarded the Nobel Prize in Literature, a recognition of his extraordinary contributions to literature and his unwavering commitment to truth. His journey from a childhood forged in shadow to a global symbol of resistance is a testament to the power of the human spirit and the enduring quest for justice. Solzhenitsyn's life and work continue to inspire generations, reminding us of the importance of standing up against tyranny and speaking out for what is right. His legacy is a beacon of hope, a reminder that even in the darkest times, the light of truth can shine through. In 1945, at the height of Soviet victory, Solzhenitsyn's world came crashing down. The Soviet Union had emerged triumphant from the ashes of World War II, its soldiers hailed as heroes, its leaders basking in the glory of their hard-won success. But for some, this victory marked the beginning of a nightmare. Amidst the celebrations, the Soviet secret police were hard at work, intercepting private communications and scrutinizing every word for signs of dissent. Solzhenitsyn, a decorated officer, had dared to criticize Stalin and the Soviet regime in his private letters. These letters, filled with his honest and unfiltered thoughts, were intercepted by the authorities, sealing his fate. Deemed an enemy of the state, he was swiftly arrested. The charges were severe: anti-Soviet propaganda and plotting to form a terrorist organization. The sentence was even harsher: 8 years in the notorious Soviet gulags, a network of forced labor camps designed to crush dissent and break the human spirit. The courtroom was a theater of propaganda, where the state showcased its power and ruthlessly silenced its critics. Solzhenitsyn stood accused of crimes against the state, his fate decided long before the trial began. The charges were a mere formality, a pretext to remove a voice of dissent from the public sphere. Thus began his descent into the heart of the Soviet penal system. The gulags were not just prisons. They were instruments of terror, designed to instill fear and obedience. Prisoners were subjected to brutal conditions, forced to endure starvation, disease, and the constant threat of violence. The camps were a microcosm of Soviet society, a brutal reflection of a system built on fear and repression. The gulags were scattered across the vast expanse of the Soviet Union, from the frozen tundras of Siberia to the remote forests of the Far East. Each camp was a world unto itself, a place where the state's iron grip was felt in every aspect of daily life. For Solzhenitsyn, this was his new reality, a world where freedom was a distant memory and survival was a daily struggle. Upon arrival, he was stripped of his identity, reduced to a mere number. The process was dehumanizing, designed to break the spirit and erase individuality. Prisoners were no longer people, they were cogs in the machinery of the state, their lives dictated by the whims of their captors. The conditions were appalling. Starvation was a constant companion, as rations were meager and often spoiled. Disease ran rampant, with little medical care available. The threat of violence loomed large, both from the guards and from fellow prisoners. It was a world where the strong preyed on the weak, and survival often meant sacrificing one's humanity. Daily life in the camps was a relentless grind. Prisoners were forced to perform backbreaking labor, often in extreme weather conditions. The guards were ever present, their watchful eyes ensuring that no one stepped out of line. The camps were a microcosm of Soviet society, a brutal reflection of a system built on fear and repression. Yet, even in the depths of despair, Solzhenitsyn's spirit refused to be broken. He found strength in the resilience of his fellow prisoners, in their capacity for compassion and hope amidst unimaginable suffering. They shared their meager resources, offered words of encouragement, and found ways to maintain their humanity in the face of overwhelming odds. These moments of compassion were lifelines, small acts of kindness that made the unbearable slightly more bearable. Solzhenitsyn observed the resilience of his fellow prisoners, their ability to find light in the darkest of places. It was a testament to the indomitable human spirit, a reminder that even in the most oppressive conditions, hope could still flourish. He listened to their stories, each one a testament to the human cost of totalitarian ideology. These were stories of loss and suffering, but also of courage and defiance. They were a reminder that even in the face of tyranny, the human spirit could not be easily extinguished. These experiences, etched into his memory, would form the foundation of his life's work. The Gulag Archipelago. Solzhenitsyn began to write, documenting the horrors he witnessed and the resilience he encountered. His writings would become a testament to the indomitable spirit of those who dared to oppose tyranny, a powerful reminder of the human capacity for hope and resistance in the face of overwhelming oppression.